Hi everyone, this is Callie. Happy New Year. This is my first video of the year and I'm excited to share a floral card. Today's video uses the Mom Spring Flowers from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to be stamping and coloring this with Copic markers. I'm going to slow down the process a little bit so you can kind of see in real time how I color, and then I'll speed through the rest of it because all the flowers and petals on this image are the same. This image is slightly bigger than a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card, so my cardstock is cut a little bit bigger so that I can stamp the entire image. I do stamp it twice for a good stamped impression. So now I'm going to slowly color here with some Copic markers. I'm using 4 Copic markers on each petal. So as you can see, I'm laying down the darkest color in a very small increment at the base of each of the petals and slightly on the edges where it might touch another petal, just to give it that sharp contrast between one petal to the next. Then I'll go in with a second color and just slightly overlap that and go over it just a little bit. Now I'm starting with my third color and slightly over the previous 2 colors just a little bit. With my last color, I would say I'm coloring about 30 to 50% of each petal. And when I color critters or any area, I look at it as one section at a time, and my technique is the same on everything. So a bit of dark and then going over that just a tiny bit with a second shade and a third shade if needed. But if I'm only coloring with 3 colors, I still adapt to that 30 to 50% rule for my lightest color. I hope that makes sense. Concentrating that darker color in the shadowed areas and using more of the lighter color really amplifies the highlight of any image that you want to color. That at least is my technique and my way for coloring. So now that you've seen me do a few of these, I'm going to go ahead and speed them up a little bit more since the technique is the same on all of the petals. There's really no secret to coloring. It's just a long and arduous process, and you just have to be patient and work on it one petal at a time. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm going to repeat that same process. And as you can see, there are some lines drawn into each of the petals at the top, and I do add a flick of dark color where those lines are. So sometimes images will help you decide where curvatures and petal highlights and whatnot can be. Now, if you don't have lines on the images that you're stamping, you can add faux curvatures by adding that darker shading in areas that you want to create that look. I hope those tips are helpful to you. For the centers of the flowers, I am using a YR24 marker with a Y15, and I also did go in with a Y11 on the other ones when I decided it needed a little bit of a lighter center. And as you can see, I didn't worry too much about the yellow stamens on the centers of the flowers. I'm going to go over that with some glitter drops at the end to bring back some interest and some dimension on those flower centers. Now, when moving on to foliage and leaves, I like to look at a leaf in 2 parts, the left side of the leaf and the right side of the leaf, and then color them the same way. On this particular image, I'm focusing the darker colors in the lower left quadrant of each section. So as you can see, I've laid down my darkest color in the bottom left, and then I am adding a medium color a little bit out. And while I didn't intend on using a 4th color, when I first started coloring this, I decided to add even a lighter color so that you can see more contrast and highlights on the foliage. So again, I am going to repeat this process for the entire image. I hope all of those tips were helpful. There is a die to the stamp set, so I've die cut my image, and instead of chopping it up for a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card, I'm just going to leave it as is, and some overhang really creates a bit more interest to a card, I think, so that's okay for this card. Before I set this aside and work on my background, I'm going to splatter it with some white paint. I don't use anything fancy, I just use a drop of some acrylic paint. You can use any acrylic paint that you might have. The opacity of your white splatters might be different depending on the paint you use and how much you water it down. So just play with it and see what consistency works for you, and if you want some smaller droplets or larger droplets. It's a matter of playing with it. I've been using just plain white paint for a while, and it's always worked out well for me. So I've set that aside to dry, and now on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 white panel, I'm just ink blending some worn lipstick Distress Oxide ink at a diagonal where I want my foliage and image to be. And then I trim that panel down 1/4 inch off all the sides. And now I'm laying down my image, and as you can see, it's going from the top left-hand corner to the right bottom-hand corner. I'm also intentionally laying down the image so that it overhangs on the right and left sides, but not at the bottom. I usually use top folding cards, so as long as it can stand without any hindrance at the bottom of the card, then it's fine for me. For the sentiment, I'm using a pre-printed sentiment strip from the Thinking of You sentiment strip set. This is my favorite sentiment strip set of all time. It has some great sentiments on there, and I think it's perfect for any floral cards for all occasions, just to let someone know you're thinking of them and missing them. Now on the floral centers on the stamens that I colored over with pink markers, I'm going to go ahead and add some Nuvo glitter drops on them. This is the Gold Coast color. It comes out a little bit milky, but once it dries, it will dry clear. After I've added some additional drops on the sides, I just tap my panel a few times just to flatten that out a little bit, and then it dries a little bit quicker too. So there's my finished panel. I do put this on a top folding A2 sized card base, and that completes my card. This is a go-to setup for me for floral cards, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in any of the products that I use, be sure to check out the links below and in the coordinating blog post where everything will be listed for your convenience. Thanks for stopping by, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye!